Alright, I'm an idiot and didn't start recording when I started building this, so we're starting halfway through because I don't want to rip all this up and start from scratch again. This is going to be a guide to making frezon and Frontier. This is a retort chip, and the goal of this is just a simple setup, or more than simple, but a decent setup that is easy enough to copy-paste onto your own chips, that you don't really need to know the ins and outs of atmospherics to make it work. You can just run this and it'll create your frezon for you. And if you get more into atmospherics and want to know how things work, you can probe this, understand it better, improve it, talk to people in the gas Discord about what each part does, how to make things better. But this is just more than introductory setup to gas mining and gas refinement, but it's something that you can follow and get walked through without needing someone there on your ship to guide you through making frezon. So, the idea of this is that in this top left, we've got an air injector. This room in general is going to be our gas storage. In the top left, this is where we take gas that we have mined and inject it into this room. This room is going to be full of a bunch of different gases. On the left outside here, I've got filters making it so that we only get the gases that we actually care about. But this room is not going to be keeping those gases separate at all. It's just going to mix them all and keep them here. On this right side, we've got the sequence of 3 pipes. And this is going to be a loop creating tritium. And tritium is achieved when you burn together oxygen and plasma. And if the burn gets too hot, then your tritium starts to burn and you're wasting oxygen and plasma. So the goal of this is to be able to loop it through these pipes as it heats up, burn it, suck out the tritium here, and then if it does start getting too hot, we've got this radiator here, which we'll be using to vent heat out of the system. So following the pipes, we're going to start here on this filter. This pulls out tritium and pushes it into this green pipe here, which stores our tritium and moves it into the left. Ignore that for now. The point is that it's moving gas from here to here, and it's going to keep going in clockwise direction. The second filter is for water vapor. Ideally, we don't create any water vapor, but inevitably it's going to happen, so having some way to pull water vapor out of the system is a good idea. Then we've got a manifold here, so the gas comes down into the manifold, then up this left side, and we've just got pipes all the way up into these 2 sensors, which we'll talk about later, further up into this top manifold, and then back down the right side. So it just keeps going in a loop, back and forth, back and forth. Then, as mentioned, if it starts getting too hot in there, we want to be able to cool it down. So when that happens, we'll be opening this signal valve, which starts pulling gas out of the bottom manifold, through this pump into the radiator, and then out through this pump back into the top manifold. So whenever we open this valve, we start moving gas through the middle pipe, but when this valve is closed, we end up moving gas through the left and right pipes. Similar idea on the left side, we're going to be moving our gas clockwise direction. This top filter is what's going to be pulling frezon out of the pipes, and it's going to go into this injector here and keep, this little room here is we're going to be storing our frezon, because frezon's really good at conducting heat. So by keeping it in here, this little room here, we are able to move heat between these 2 radiators. Anyway, we're pulling frezon out of this filter. And then this bottom filter, we're pulling out nitrous oxide, because nitrous oxide is a byproduct of mixing frezon and nitrogen, which always ends up happening at least a little bit in most setups. So you want a way to pull your nitrous oxide out of the setup, out of this frezon creation room or pipeline. More advanced setups will keep nitrous oxide around because nitrous oxide is useful. However, for this, we're just going to be pulling it out, mixing it with our water vapor line, which goes out left into our waste pipes, out into space. Anyway, we've got... Wait for the announcement.
Sector appear to be malfunctioning. Some ships may experience gas buildup until they reset.
Alright, so we got our 2 filters, which are pushing gas down, clockwise again, gets down into this manifold here, and then same as before, it goes up the left side, which are just regular old pipes, into these now 3 gas sensors, into this top manifold, which there is a manifold underneath this injector, so you just place it underneath and it works. And then down the left side, once again, into the filter. So you get this clockwise loop of gas, and that's where we'll be producing our frezon. And then frezon needs to stay cold in order for the reaction to happen, but the warmer the reaction is while still being cold enough. So the warmer the reaction is, the more frezon you get. So the goal is to keep frezon as warm as possible without making it super hot. So same thing as before, if the frezon starts getting too cold, we will be opening this signal valve here, which allows the frezon mixture to go through the middle pipe, which same thing as before, gas pump, radiator, gas pump, which will be warming it back up. We can max this out, turn that on, that should be on. All right, so let's talk about these sensors. So this sensor here, if I show what it's connected to, is connected to this pipe. This air alarm is connected to this pipe sensor. Doesn't matter which sensor you connect each air alarm to, but they do need to be connected to different pipe sensors. So if we show all three, you'll see that this one is connected to the top, this one's connected to the middle, and this one's connected to the bottom. You don't want them overlapping in this case. So this one here, that's connected to the top sensor. It is set to not warn about pressure, not warn about any gases or anything. It is only sent to give us a warning if the temperature of the gas in this pipe here falls below 60 Kelvin. We can adjust this later, but we'll just start off at 60. And then if we get a signal, so we're linking it with the multi-tool right now, if we get a warning, we want to open this. So if the temperature in that pipe falls below 60 Kelvin, we get a warning signal, which opens this signal valve here, pushes it through the radiator, which then warms it back up. And then once the temperature is above 60 Kelvin, we go back to normal on the air alarm, which means we want to close this, which stops warming up. And then on this right side, we have two sensors, and this sensor here is set to same thing, not warn about pressure, not warn about any gas mixtures. It's just set to warn us if the temperature in this pipe goes above 650 Kelvin. So, same thing, if we link it to this, we see that when we get that warning, once it starts getting too hot, this sensor here opens up, and then once it cools down and is back to normal, it closes again. So if it's too hot, the sensor's open, we start radiating heat. If it's too cold, the sensor or the signal valve closes, and we stop radiating heat. The other sensors are going to be there to be controlling our gas input. So this second sensor on the right is linked to this air alarm. We have it set to warn us if the temperature is too hot, and additionally warn us if their plasma content gets too high. I am going to suffocate in a second because I'm a Vox. Give me a moment. It is set to warn us if the temperature is above 650 Kelvin or if plasma content gets above 1.5%. Again, we can adjust these later to make it more efficient, but this will work for now. The idea is that if either of these are true, we don't want to burn anymore, because if we keep burning when there's too much plasma, so if there's above, I believe the magical number is like 4% plasma and nothing else, which there's always going to be a little bit of other stuff, so slightly underneath 4% plasma, it's an inefficient reaction. You don't have enough oxygen for the burn to be efficient. You end up with carbon instead of tritium, which not great. You don't want to be turning your oxygen plasma into carbon, because carbon's not, you can recycle it, but we don't want carbon, we want tritium. And so if the plasma content goes above 1.5%, we will not want any more plasma in there. Then similar thing up here, if it gets too hot, if it's above 650 Kelvin, we don't want any more plasma in there, because the plasma is what's our catalyst for the burn. It's not strictly a catalyst, but we're treating it like a catalyst in this case. If we announcements.
A flare has erupted from the nearby star. This may cause some channels to go down for the duration of the flare.
All right. If it gets too hot, we want to stop injecting plasma because we want it to cool down pretty quickly. And so by cutting off our plasma line, we stop injecting fuel into the fire, which means it cools down even faster. Simple stuff, but setting it up this way just prevents us from wasting our gases. On the other side, we have our frezon mixture, and this one, is this one oxygen? No, this one's nitrogen. Nitrogen. So this one's set to give us a warning if nitrogen falls below 30%. The exact number that you choose for your nitrogen content doesn't matter all that much. I think the perfect number is somewhere around 46, even amounts of oxygen and nitrogen. I just set it to 30 because it's a clean number. Setting it to 30 doesn't actually make the entire thing clean, but it's a number. It really doesn't matter what this is set to, frankly. But the idea is that frezon production needs a little bit of nitrogen, but it doesn't need a lot. And so if we have too much nitrogen in our pipes, we don't want to add more nitrogen to the pipes and clog them up. So if we're ever getting a warning about too much nitrogen, we cut off our nitrogen supply. The second air alarm is someone, oh, that's the solar flare. Someone is not boarding. All right. The second one should be set for oxygen. And similar thing, you do need a ton of oxygen to make frezon, but you don't want to be constantly injecting oxygen in there because it'll just clog your pipes. So if there's ever below 63% oxygen, we add more oxygen to the pipes. And you'll notice 63 plus 30 does not go above 100%, which is important. If you set this up so that the nitrogen and the oxygen sum to above 100, you're going to end up with clogged pipes. So it's just important to make sure that whatever numbers you do end up picking for these, they stay below. And for the 63 number, we take, in order to make frezon, you need 8 oxygen for every 1 tritium with a catalyst of nitrogen that doesn't get consumed. And so with 70% of our mixture left, because we're reserving 30% of it for nitrogen, divide that by 9, multiply by 8, and it's 62, which actually a good point. I should lower this to 62 instead of 63. And then we'll be expecting that the remaining 7% or so of the mixture is going to be for tritium. And then a little bit left over in order to handle a buffer of frezon and nitrous oxide that will end up in our pipes. Which, yeah, we'll lower this even more. We'll bring this down to 60. Not 600 to 60. There we go. So that's our air alarm setup and our sensor setup. At this point, we just need to start injecting gases into this. So I'll pause the video and then set that up, and then we'll come back, but it's just placing a bunch of scrubbers and connecting them to the right pipes. All right, I've got everything placed, and so now we're going to talk through it and link everything up. So these 2 scrubbers here are going to be for oxygen. So painting them blue, and then we go list. So this one here, we can just connect to this. This one. Might need one more air alarm now that I'm thinking about it. Yep, I'm going to need one more air alarm. 1 second. Alright, made one more air alarm. Technically you don't need it, but it does make life better if you have it. So we're going to collect all of these scrubbers. There are 4 of them. Add it to here. Then clear this out so we don't accidentally do anything else. And then this air alarm, don't really need to care much about the sensors, but these scrubbers, we're going to start by disabling them all, as well as turning off auto mode. That's an important step. So now these 4 scrubbers are disabled. They're no longer pulling any gas in. And this one here is 0D09. It's this top one. We're going to set it to wide net. We're going to turn off everything but oxygen. We're going to copy settings to similar devices because we also want the same thing for 25DC. Same thing. This one's going to be scribbling oxygen and wide net. And now we have this one, which is 690D. This one, yep. Instead of scrubbing oxygen, it's going to be scrubbing plasma. And then this last one down here is 5CE0. So yep, 5CE0, and it's going to be scrubbing nitrogen. And the reason we turn off auto mode is that whenever a air alarm changes its setting, so whenever, like these ones currently have a warning, whenever it goes to warning or to a danger, if you have auto mode on, it automatically changes these settings. So if you've ever manually edited these settings on a scrubber, you want to make sure auto mode stays off. Sensor wise, we're going to turn off everything so that it just stays green all the time. Technically, you can have fancy stuff in here to warn you about certain situations, but for us, we're just going to turn everything off and then copy to the other devices. Now, so since we just set up our scrubbers, I have been breathing in this room and I breathe out a tiny bit of ammonia. And so those scrubbers picked up that ammonia and put some of it into these pipes. So we're going to flush the pipes real quick. And same thing down here, flush this pipe. So now that they're set up, they won't be scrubbing the ammonia out of the air. So we can flush these pipes one time and get everything out real easy. And then in here, we've got a little bit of ammonia built up, and so we're going to set our 2 waste filters to pull out the ammonia here and here. That's this, and that'll pull the ammonia out of our loops and into these pipes. And that's a one-time thing. You don't need to do that after this once. So now that these are both empty, we can switch this back to water vapor. We can switch this back to nitrous oxide. All right. Now, we need to set up our signals. So, to remind ourselves, this filter here is set to warn about nitrogen. And so, when we get a nitrogen warning, we come down to our nitrogen pipe and say, when you've got a warning, open up. If you don't have a warning, keep closed. No, other way around. Do that. If you've got a warning, we want it to be closed because we have too much nitrogen, so we want to close it to stop adding more nitrogen. Under normal conditions, we leave it open. This pump here, this gas pump, is just there to prevent us from adding too much nitrogen at once. So scrubbers will pull all the nitrogen out of the air around them until the pipe is very, very high pressure. And without this pump here, it will mean that we've got a high pressure on this side of our valve and a low pressure on this side. So the second it opens, it's going to dump a ton of nitrogen into our system. By decreasing this down to 10 or something really low, we decrease the rate at which we add nitrogen so that we never overflow. And while we're here, we might as well paint this. So we'll go pipes and nitrogen. And make sure we've got our oxygen painted as well. And then this one is going to be our plasma. So let's do the linking for plasma. This right one here, if you're remembering, we've got it set to warn us if it's too hot or if there's too much plasma. So we link this to this and we say, hey, if you've got a warning, you want to close, but under normal conditions, you can stay open. And then the last thing that we need to set up is the oxygen. So we set this one here, and same thing. If you've got a warning, you stay closed, otherwise you can open up. All right, now that we have everything linked and set up, we're basically ready to start. Once you start things up, you will start be pulling oxygen and nitrogen out of this room here, and so you want to start playing around that fact. Make sure you never open these blast doors again, and whenever you come into this room, you want to make sure you're suited up, and you want to make sure that you've got your hollow fan placed underneath this door so that you don't leak anything. So we can start moving all of our stuff out of the room. And then to start it up, we just come over here, and these scrubbers, we re-enable them. And then for the first pass, we have to manually open this real quick. manually open this real quick. That should result in us slowly adding a little bit of oxygen. Yeah. Should this not be... Ah, we need a warning above 60, not warning below 60. Yeah, I set these up backwards. Anyway, it's working now. So if you're above 60% nitrogen, or sorry, if you're above 60% oxygen, we close this valve. And this one, if we're sensing nitrogen above 30, then we close the other valve. So we've just opened the other valve, and you can see we're slowly adding more nitrogen into the mixture. And once it goes above 30% nitrogen, give it a moment. Again, we set this gas pump here really low, so it takes a moment. But eventually we'll get there. And now we're above 30% nitrogen, and so this air alarm started to go to warning, and this valve down here has closed. So this pump is still working for now because it's got a little bit of nitrogen on the input, but once it's done, we're stabilized, and we've got just over 30% nitrogen, and we've got enough oxygen. So once we start adding tritium to this, we'll end up producing frezon if it's cold. And then I should double check this plasma. Yeah, so warning above 1.5% plasma, and should be open because we're in normal. We don't have any plasma in the air right now, so it's not actually filling up. And this last one, I usually set this to 150-ish to start with, and we don't have any valve at all on this last oxygen filter because there's no reason to. Basically, we always want this pipe full of oxygen up to some pressure, and by only controlling our plasma, we also naturally end up controlling how much oxygen we're putting in, because if you stop putting in plasma but keep putting in oxygen, then you just keep putting in oxygen. So we're just filling this up to some arbitrary pressure. Again, I start at 150. Once you start really picking up gas as you're mining, that'll jump up to like 600-ish is where you end up at, because hot gas expands, so 600 ends up being a reasonable choice. At this point, I think next step is going to be actually mining some gases to get this started, and then I'll show you how to kickstart the process, because right now we've got all these pipes, but you'll notice we don't have a heater or freezer anywhere in here. And so we'll mine some gas to get a first shot of stuff in here, and then we will be placing a heater and freezer on this, likely just finding some open pipe and connecting it to it, and setting those up, and that will kickstart the reaction for us. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, we're back. I only mined a single asteroid, but we are ready to get moving. I've got a little bit of plasma, got plenty of oxygen, plenty of nitrogen, so we can get this running. The only thing you missed was I added one more scrubber so that there were trace amounts of tritium, so I just wanted to put that in the line. So I added one more scrubber here, which you can see is same as the other, is wide net. It's just pulling tritium, and it's same thing. It's going, there's a manifold underneath this blast door connected to this pipe, and so the tritium's ending up in our frezon loop. And then I've also brought in our heater and freezer. If you don't know, you can turn a heater, or you can turn... Start here. Retort has 3 freezers on it to begin with, because there's this little freezer room right here that it intends for you to use. You should use it. For now, I'm not going to set it up, but it comes with 3 freezers, and you can turn a freezer into a heater by removing its circuit board, and then using a screwdriver on the circuit board, which just converts it from a freezer thermomachine circuit board into a heater thermomachine circuit board. So, real easy. You'll have your freezer and your heater. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag our freezer up here. And these can fit on top of other pipes, so things get confusing once you add them in, but they do just kind of fit. So we're going to put that here. We're going to adjust it to secondary configuration. Going to wrench it down. There's this pipe, which will create a little bit of a spill, but that's fine. Then I don't have steel on me, do I? Oh, get away from the tritium so we don't cause a fire. Be very careful when using a welder near tritium leaks, obviously. But we'll just pipe. Connect this up to our freezer. And paint it purple again. So now we've got our freezer connected to our frezon loop. And that will be what kickstarts that going off. Once it's on, we're going to leave it off for now.
A low-level EMP has flashed through the sector. CENTCOM has triggered a failsafe that may disable some ships' APCs to protect them from damages.
And similar situation, we're going to set up, we'll do it here. Set up our heater. We're going to adjust it to the secondary configuration. Reach it down, as well as remove this pipe. Wait for this. We'll get D-junction so that our heater is now connected to tritium production. So for the heater, we're going to set it to its maximum value. It doesn't actually need to be this hot, but good point. So the ignition happens at 373 Kelvin. We're going to crank it just a touch above that so that it stays ignited. And for a freezer, you do need it all the way down for frezon production, but for now we're going to leave this off. We're going to start by producing tritium. Do be aware that the first time you make tritium, you are going to burn it. Because at this point, you don't have your frezon yet. You need to create tritium to create frezon. And your frezon is what's going to be cooling your tritium production line. And so the first time you make tritium, it's going to go out of control. You're going to start a fire inside these pipes, not out in the open. So don't freak out too much once you see it overheat. That's expected. Before we start, I'm going to make sure that I have... I want to make sure I'm not pulling any frezon out of my chamber. Because right now... Okay, yeah, so... I'm going to set this to like 2,500-ish. So, this inlet pressure regulator is connected to the passive vent back there. When you're first setting this up, you can have nothing here. It's just a feature thing that you'll want to be able to pull the frezon out to do other stuff with it. But the idea is once we create frezon, it's going to end up in this chamber back here, and we don't want to pull it out to sell it or anything like that. So, go over here. Alright, we should be good to start things up. So, we've got a bunch of oxygen and a little bit of plasma in the pipe, so once we fire this on, take a bit to heat up because there's a decent chunk of gas in there. Actually, that's a good point. Why? I must have set one of the pressure valves wrong at the beginning. But, so, this is a bit higher pressure than intended. This gas pump that's underneath the freezer should be what's regulating the pressure inside here. I had it wrong the first time, I guess. But now we're slowly heating up. And I guess I'll pause until we get closer so you don't have to watch the number climb slowly. Alright, we're back. Please ignore the fact that I'm hurt. I may or may not have just breathed in a ton of oxygen, so we'll be fine. Anyway, we're at 97 Celsius, so turn this on. We should cross over and start ignition in a moment. Once we ignite, we should see a lot of stuff start moving. Once this crosses 100, maybe should catch fire eventually. Oh yeah. There we go. A little bit being made. As it burns, it increases the temperature even faster. And you can see down here that every once in a while we'll get tritium in our pipe. This is filtering out properly, yeah. So if we turn this pump off, we should see it build up slowly. Or just push it into the other side. This warms up, and then once this passes 650, we should see this valve open. And that will start cooling it down. However, because we don't have our coolant in the pipes yet, it overpressures pretty quickly, and now we're stuck. So, that's the first time you make tritium, that's what's going to happen. You kind of have to just deal with that. But things will be slowly cooling down now. Yeah. So, first time you make it, expect that, but we do have a little bit of tritium now, so we can start making our frezon. So we'll push this into the other side. And then can turn this off and turn this on, which again, we'll have to wait a while for this to cool down. So I'll see you there. All right, we brought things down nice and cold, so I'm going to set this back down. You can watch the last little bit. And once this hits 73, we should see frezon show up. So, yep, there we go. Now we've got frezon showing up in here. And we've used up all of our tritium at this point, but now we have a little buffer of frezon, which is good. Now, this should have a little bit more oxygen here. There we go. And how much plasma do we have? Oh, we're out of plasma. So, now produced pretty much our full load worth of frezon at this point. But as you go out and mine more, you're fully automated and set up. As you get more plasma, it'll get pulled into that scrubber and will be pushed into there where it'll create tritium. Tritium will get pushed into here, where it'll create frezon. And your frezon helps regulate the temperature between the two, which means you're basically fully automated at that point. This keeps injecting oxygen for some reason. It shouldn't. This one's our oxygen sensor. Huh. It should be warning. Enabled warning above 50%. Okay, so good learning opportunity. Sometimes this happens where you have an air alarm where it's set to create a warning under some conditions, but it's just not working. The way you fix this is that you have to deconstruct it, which takes... Open it up. Snip all the wires. And then crowbar. That gives you the air alarm electronics, and you put it back in, screw drive it. That recreates the air alarm, and then you'll need to figure out, I believe. We'll do this. Show. So yeah, it's this middle one. So we'll clear this, connect the sensor to this air alarm again, and it keeps its previous settings. Now, warning above 50% oxygen. Alright, well, at this point, we've run out of plasma. You can see our scrubber that picks up the plasma is empty and there's nothing else in the pipes, which means this loop, which normally creates our tritium. Normally creates our tritium isn't operating right now, which means this pipe here is empty, and we kind of stalled on making frezon. We still have a little bit that we're pulling out, and that's good, but for now it means that we're stuck. You can see that because this pipe is cold from producing tritium, which it's freaking out right now because the gas is moving super fast. But you can see every once in a while it actually catches up and you can see the temperature is like really fucking cold. Because it's cold, this signal valve is opening. On this side, the temperature is below our critical temperature, so its signal valve is closed. As you go out mining, this is fully automated. Ignore the fact that I overheated this room. That's from earlier. But normally this room is perfectly livable, and you'll just be getting your air injected there, your plasma picked up in this scrubber here, and it'll go into this, create your tritium, which will then go into here and create your frezon. It'll be fully automated. You don't have to touch it anymore. In terms of fixing things when things go wrong, the biggest issue will be is if this loop overpressures on the right, you run into issues. So if you end up with more than 4.5 megapascals in this pipe, then these pumps that normally cool down the loop stop working. So you stop being able to cool down this loop, wait for the announcement.
Electrostatic front has hit the sector. APC units on ships may power down to avoid damages if you are caught in the wave.
Alright, so if this loop overpressures, how do you fix it? The way that you're going to need to fix it is you're going to need to vent it into space, basically. There's not currently a pipe set up to vent it into space. However, it's very easy to do because I should have some steel on me. Just go here and say, alright, we've got one more pipe. Put it here, into the wall, and now we have a pipe going through the wall that we can use to place a vent in space temporarily and clean out the pipe. That will empty the pipe of all its super hot content, and then once it's back down to regular temperatures, you can reset it. On the frezon side, the only way that you can break the frezon side of things is if you heat your frezon to over 700 Kelvin. Which, speaking honestly, every Atmos tech has done that at least once, because, you know, we do wacky shit all the time. It happens. If that happens, you do have to vent the whole thing, similar to placing a gas underneath this. You just place the gas underneath this. Similar to how I just placed the pipe underneath this wall here in order to vent the this side here. You just place another pipe underneath this wall, float around outside.
The electrokinetic front has left the sector.
Float around outside and then place a passive vent out where that pipe is connected out here, and that would basically be it. And then once it's cleared out, you just remove the passive vents and you're good to go. Hopefully this helps in terms of learning. You basically, if you are just copy pasting, it'll work. If you want to get more deep into Atmos, at this point you've learned actually a lot. So for example, you've learned how to make tritium and frezon. Going more advanced from this is basically learning how to make setups that are not this one in particular, creating your own. You've learned how to create new air alarms and link them to sensors, as well as useful tools like signal valves. You've learned how to set up air scrubbers and filters, and then you've also learned a little bit about manifolds, which manifolds are scary the first time you use them, but you pick it up pretty quickly. It's not that bad. It's just you can fit 3 pipes on every tile instead of 1, which once you're familiar with placing types is obviously a really good thing, but it's very understandable that if it's your first time looking at Atmos devices, seeing literally 3 times as many things on the ground is terrible, and this all just looks like spaghetti. Otherwise, hopefully this helps. If it doesn't, let me know. We can update the guide and get more people playing Atmos out here, because it's kind of lonely. Alright, figured I should just cover this real quick. So, the amount of frezon we did make with that just quick pulse where I only mined a single node. There's 9 mole in this pipe at 200 liters, and then in that room there's over 10,000 liters. So if we do the math real quick, 10,000 divided by 200, 50 times 9.76. We've got around 488 moles, which will sell for roughly 4,000 spesos. So for mining a single node and doing the work of setting this up, we got 4,000 spesos. And from this point, since it's automated, now it's just every time you mine a gas node, you get another 4,000-ish spesos. So it takes a little bit of setup, but once you're there, you're good to go. And what I wanted to show off real quick was what I did to get gas into the chamber, because it's different from the default that comes on the ship. So this external pipe that's hooked up to the miners, I just have 4 filters here that are pulling off the 4 gases that I want. So tritium, plasma, nitrogen, oxygen. I don't need that much I don't need that much nitrogen, so I set the nitrogen filter to none for most of the time. If I'm ever running low on nitrogen, I just pick up more by setting that filter to nitrogen. My god, these announcements.
EMP has flashed through the sector. CENTCOM has triggered a failsafe that may disable some ships' APCs to protect them from damages.
Thanks, Central Command. Alright, and then down here I've got a frezon filter, just in case. And then the reason I have this is because sometimes frezon ends up in your waste pipes, and so I like having a frezon filter in there as well. And then obviously we've got one for helium because helium's worth grabbing, and I've just got it going into a canister for now. You can also have your helium go into the big room with everything else. Doesn't mess up anything, so, you know, pick your poison. But this is just ripping out the existing stuff that normally is pre-placed here and converting it into a single injector pipe that all comes from these 4 filters. Then for sale, we've got this line out here from the frezon pipe. So if we were to just wrench this in place and set this to 0, we can start pulling our frezon out and we'll get this pipe full of frezon. So once it comes time to sell, or you want to use this for something else, just pull the frezon out of the chamber and you're good to go. So again, have fun. Hopefully this helped.